So, um, uh, so we'll see how that plays out. Ryan, I want to go to you. I just would love for you to like try to briefly share what you shared with me yesterday about a conversation that you had. I love this scripting that you came up with when a customer asked him after your initial discovery call something about rates and what he's seen in the market and how you responded to that, because I thought it was brilliant. So listen closely, folks. This is really good.
Well, so I mean, props to G. I kind of went back rather than doing like par and a point. I'm just doing low cost rate, advertised rate, right? And so it gets me started. Like that's how I start off this call. It's like, hey guys, do you know that you get the opportunity to choose whatever rate you want? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, now that you're buying a house, you're going to get targeted. Your phone's probably listening to you, and you're just going to get rates thrown at you all over the place. 6.25, 6.75. And what is they're not going to disclose to you is all the fees that are associated with these rates. So I want to talk you through what this looks like on our end, right? So a lot of people think the lowest rate is the best option. Here is option A here, what we call low cost rate, which most lenders won't show you. And then you've got your advertised rate right here, which is included with, you know, a 1% fee in order to get that rate. So let's talk about the break even, la da 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 da, right? And so I like I'll do what G does sometimes, like, hey, let's just look at Rocket Rate. Let's see what their rates are and what they quote. Oh, they've got 2 points. So for your loan amount, it'd be 10 grand, right? That's a lot of money, right? To save 150 bucks a month. Yeah, wow, that's pretty crazy. So we, you know, had that conversation, and then the client basically was like, "Hey, I know you talked about this, but like, you know, we're getting a bunch of rates, and like I saw rates at 6.25. So like, tell me why I should use you." And I was like, "Yeah, great question." I was like, "We all get our rates from the same place. At the end of the day, you know, if you're seeing dramatically lower rates, I can guarantee you it's associated with a ton of costs because we do a daily rate comparison, and we're really competitive in the marketplace." And I can guarantee you that these other people are really trying to dangle a rate and sneak in some fees behind. And basically after I said that, he's like, okay, sounds good. And like, didn't talk about it again. So I think I'm going to
I
use it.
keep getting the I keep getting it. It really is. I forgot how this used to be, but you know, the back before they kind of tightened it up before the CFPB during the heyday, and Mike, you probably remember this, but I'm sure you remember it, Silver State. People advertised whatever rate they felt like advertising, and APR was like, maybe they give you out the APR, maybe they don't. And and it's just like what I'm getting every day from better.com. I'm still getting an email every day. Today the rate's 5 5/8, but it's $17,000 based on whatever the loan amount I plugged in. I think it was about 400 grand. So it's like, if you're, I mean, who's going to pay $17,000 extra for their loan? So that's where, you know, that's where this, the educational opportunity becomes really powerful. I just love the line is like, your phone's probably listening to you. So your phone is listening, and you're just going to start seeing shit show up. Plus your reticular activators activated. So remember when you bought your last car and you started seeing the same car everywhere you went? Well, now that you're thinking about buying a house and you're thinking about interest rates, you're going to notice interest rates everywhere you go. You're going to hear it all the time. That's what a reticular activator does. So I just love that. I love that point. It's like, here's how it works. I'll show you how it works. And when you become the person that's doing the educating, and I love what you said too, is like before when they would ask, when a customer would bring it up, you were kind of hesitant, like, well, you know, I'm not really sure how they're doing that. And now you're like, oh yeah, let me show you how they do it. Let me show you how this works. And when you're the one who's showing them how it works, like, okay, I trust you. And that's just how the trust takes over at that point. So good job, dude. I love the way you're handling it. And you can just tell that you have a completely different level of confidence about it. So much of this is your confidence level. It's how you respond, not being surprised. It's like, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, let me show you how it works. This is funny. This comes up all the time. In fact, let me show you what one of my customers got shown Giuseppe's emails. Like, one of my customers just got this in the mail. Like, companies they're not really interested in your long-term financial health. They're really interested in turning another loan over. And so anything they can get you to do to commit, they will. They're not going to tell you that 6.25 today is $10,000. They're not going to tell you that. It's like, we got 6.25. Oh, that guy's at 6.75. Yeah, that's really high. And like 6.25 sounds great, but it comes with a cost. So that's it. I love that. So good job.
Well, another little small piece that I've done before too is like when a client's like, how do I know I'm getting the best rate? I just told them like, I wouldn't be in business if I don't provide competitive rates. And that like, this was a sit in here. So I had to deliver it very confidently. So that was something else I've used. But I think that's a script, but what I also want to focus on is like relationship up to that point is such a key point, you know? Like they're going to trust you more if you've built that relationship prior to just being confident in that moment too. So that's the other thing I've been really focusing on, honestly.
What are you doing to build the relationship?
I just like treat them like they're my friends. You know, what's up, guys? Hey, Elfers, how's it going? I send them a thank you card for every application. Like this dude works for Stryker and he's like, I'm gonna take some sales tactics from you. So I'm like small touches, you know, like I'm just little small touches. I'm getting back to them quickly. You know, granted he knew Wilkins, so like that was helpful, but I don't know. I think it's just treating them like they're your friends truly, and that's what's worked well for me.
Taking the time to get to really know somebody, just as you're doing a discovery call, you're like, so where do you work? No, okay, like great. How long have you worked there? That's cool. Well, how'd you get into that? That's not part of the application. How did they get into it? But now they're sharing personal information with you. As soon as they start sharing personal information, the trust level rises because they're just transferring trust because you're listening. It's important to be a good listener in this business, right? A great salesperson is a great talker.
Like writing that down and then reviewing your discovery call notes before the Zoom and then referencing that kind of stuff in the Zoom. Like you've gotten people before that have remembered something and you're like, dude, how did you remember that? Whether or not they actually remembered it, it's like super impressive, right? So like remembering their kid's name, like that goes, you know, a super long way. Remembering their motivation of like, yeah, you know, you want to move because Oakley's moving in, you know, Oakley's getting into kindergarten soon. Like that's a feeling, right?
Well, when somebody tells you they want a yard for their dog, like that's cool. What kind of dog do you have? What's your dog's name? How long have you had him? You bring that up, the next conversation, dude, I can't wait for Fido to get his backyard. I'm like, dude, thank you. Like, because you care about their dog. You care about what they care about. That's just super powerful. These are just relationships. This is just, you know, I've said this a million times. This business is easy if you like people. If you don't like people, selling is a hard job. And liking people just means being interested in who they are as human beings. All of us want to be known. All of us want to be seen. And we want to be heard. We want to be understood. And that makes us feel good when we think we're seen, heard, and understood by others. So just keep that in mind because that's all your customers want. And everybody else is making it very transactional. So be relational. That's it. The next thing I want to talk about is the subject of what's come up in these conversations that we've been having in 2 short days or 3, I guess. Thursday, yeah, in 3 days of pipeline meetings and conversations with people in the operations department. There's 2 things that I want to cover. The first one is relative to communication, the way we communicate with the people in the operations department, and this is just communication with people in general. Nobody. I'll just be blunt. Is that the email communication can be harsh. It can be harsh and it can't be harsh, right? We can't have harsh email communication. Email communication is the most misunderstood form of communication I think I've ever seen. People insert words that aren't there when they tell you what they read. Because if you look at the email, you'll see no, that's not the word they used. They didn't use that word. You inserted the word shit there, like they didn't. Like it doesn't say that. But that's what people do because they interpret your message, and a lot of it is the verbal way that email shows up, the exclamation points, the all caps, the why the heck do we have to do this ? Like it's stuff like that. It doesn't even have to be swear words. It just has to be frustration. Figuring out a way to not express frustration in an email has got to be an art. And so that isn't the reason for what's going on. Some of the breakdowns is I'll take 100% responsibility for the breakdowns that have been occurring in that department because I wasn't spending close enough attention to what was going on with everything else that's on my plate. But there isn't anything more important to me than the delivery of a flawless loan experience, on time, under budget, no surprises, is the backbone of who we are as an organization. And we will get back to that quickly. But it is what hasn't changed, and you all need to hear this. What hasn't changed is it starts with us. It starts with the salespeople. It starts with the complete loan application. It starts with following all of the things that we're supposed to follow every single time to turn over excellence at turnover, EAT. Excellence at turnover is got to be our mindset and our focus on this side of the table. That isn't going to solve everything, but it's certainly going to go a long way, because what I've heard a lot of is they're afraid to push back. They're afraid to say something isn't in there. They're just afraid to make comments. Now, I don't know how much of that, I have a sense that a lot of that was fostered by Kim's approach to this. And I'm not trying to throw Kim under the bus here, but I think Kim's approach to this was, well, we can't make the salespeople mad. And if you say something like that, it's like, I'm not trying to make them mad. I'm trying to frickin' deliver for them, and I need them to follow a process. So you've seen a couple of emails that Jacqueline has forwarded out about just some minor housekeeping things that have to be adhered to. We're going to go through our process in a very short period of time. This is high priority, like what the standards are for you at turnover are going to be reiterated, and they've got to be held accountable to it. And I'm going to go back to an environment where, once I get this new ops manager in place, where the file's coming back if it's not there, and it's not going to be you guys do it. It's going to be, no, you do it. You got to do your job. I'll hold them accountable, but you have to be accountable too. And then it's a lot easier. Now, for the most part, we have great files at turnover, but there's just some sloppiness. I've had files turn over without findings. We have files turned over with 6 different MI quotes in there and not telling them which one you're using. There's LP and DU findings, and we're not saying which ones we're using. I know these are minor things, but it's just sloppy. It's just let them figure it out type of turnover, and it can't be that. We have to be tight, and then you have a right to expect everything. Now, we're going to work together with them and get this thing dialed in so that we're back to where on time, under budget, no surprises is not an exception, but actually the rule. And the other thing that I will tell you that we're going to be focusing on very quickly is turnover standards are going to be slightly different for you when it comes to non-delegated loans, because we can't submit that non-delegated loan to an investor without 100% of the credit documents that are necessary, because either they won't underwrite it or they'll just suspend it, and without telling you anything, because we don't have everything that we need. So what that means is assets are not going to be, we have to have assets at turnover. So however we're doing that, that's going to be a slight change. And there's any reason why we can't do a fast non-delegated file, but we have to know what the process is for turning it over and to be done. Huntington has a really dialed in process that we've used that, when followed, works really well. Your file will sail through underwriting, and it's little things. It's like you can't just include income documents. I mean, you can just include income documents, but including a note with how you want the income, how you calculated the income for the underwriter. I never wanted my underwriter to make her own decisions. I wanted her to agree with mine. So I didn't just send them pay stubs. I sent them pay stubs, and I showed them on a piece of paper, like, here's how I calculated the income. You can do it like this. And I used to circle the W-2 and the year and the social, and this is their income, and divided it by 12. Like, I did shit like that back when we could submit files that way. You can still do the same thing, and it's just going to be determining exactly what those standards are and adhering to them. And for those of you with LOAs, making sure that they're adhering to them, so that we just have a process that we're following every single time to create the result that we're looking for. Jacqueline, is there anything that you wanted to add, because you've been closest to this with the stuff you're doing? And again, nobody's more grateful for what you're doing than I am. So thank you.
I'm glad that I can do it. So I'd say I'd reiterate everything that Dave said as far as some of the communication stuff. Like, just don't talk to them like you talk to your kid. Guys, like, they really are trying to do a good job. They are scared of you. They're scared of pushing back. They're scared you're going to yell at them. They're scared they're going to lose their job. So you just need to be nice and like practice some kindness. I know some of these files that I've been involved in are getting a little stressful, but just know, like, we're all on the same page. We're all trying to find a solution. And there's definitely a couple files that I want to pull out and audit and do like an autopsy like we used to do, and just figure out, okay, where was the breakdown? What needs to be fixed? I'm seeing some stuff that's just, people just haven't raised their hands, and they're like, oh yeah, that never gets done, so we just do it, or we don't know, so we just pushed it through, kind of thing. So this is just unfortunately an environment of paranoia has been created inside of that operations department, and they just feel like they're constantly getting screamed and yelled at. And so I just think if we can soften our approach a little bit and just be more complete, over communicate. If you've got something funky on a file, have an underwriter look at it before you submit it, and get mad if it doesn't go the way you wanted it to. Just It's better to over document on the front end and then pull out what you don't need once you get it submitted to underwriting. They really do want to do a good job. They're trying. And so I'll keep working on them. If you guys have feedback or anything like that that you need me to start working on, I've got a laundry list of stuff that we're trying to clean up. Let me know, because I want this to be as efficient as humanly possible so that we can get back to those super quick turnaround times. But just patience. And I'm, like I said, there's some things like the dates that I sent you guys out. It turns out that the dates in the contract checklist we're not communicating with, we're not talking to the other dates that everybody's pulling. So that's a simple fix, but we didn't know. So I can't fix it if you guys don't tell us that it's broken. So that's it.
Well, some of the simplest things that are in there, when that file comes over there without a loan objection deadline and without an appraisal deadline, for whatever reason, like sometimes they weren't putting it in there. And so they're actually working off a pipeline. I don't know how this is even possible. They're trying to manage a pipeline without deadlines. Like, how do you do that? Or Giuseppe, you guys had a file where there was it's an FHA loan without an appraisal so there was no officially an appraisal deadline apparently on FHA loans. And so there's no appraisal deadline in the contract, which is crazy to me, because, but we need the appraisal and we need it by a certain date. So it's things like that. Let's think through what we're doing and saying, we still need a deadline in here though, because we need a deadline for when we want that stuff back. So they haven't been using the internal clear to close deadline. We're going to go back to that immediately, where we're shooting for the actual clear to close deadline. Apparently over the last several months, for whatever reason, loan objection deadline hasn't been a real deadline in anybody's minds. Nobody has said that out loud, but if you see the pattern, you're just like, what is going on here? Like, this isn't how we do this. We're supposed to be clear to close no later than 4 business days prior to funding. That's it. And that's the latest. And that's late. 4 days before closing is late as far as I'm concerned, because like I got to get an ICD out that day and at the latest, right? Like that's the latest day that I can get an ICD out. So it's supposed to be long before that. So we're going to get back to that kind of a system in place, and we'll do it quickly. But I'm going to be updating a standards for turnover list with Jacqueline's help. Doesn't have to be like cast in marble. We'll make adjustments to it as we learn from it, but I need everybody's cooperation, and we're going to go back to a standard where if it's not in there, it's going back, because we have to have what we need. I'll do the job, but you've got to do yours, and then you have every right to expect us to do ours. And at the same time, we need to work together to get it right. So we can do this. We're better at this than any company I've ever been associated with. And I apologize for the breakdown, because it's unacceptable to me, and that's why we had to make the change that we made. So.
Well, and I'll say too, like I've been meeting with everybody one-on-one, just trying to get some feedback. What are you seeing on files and things like that? And if you guys are seeing stuff on files that I don't already know about, that you're like, or hey, this would be more efficient if we would do this way, please give me that information so that we can figure out how to work something like that. Like there's no reason with the amount of talent and time in the industry on this call right now that we can't all collaborate together and be all doing things the same way. Like it doesn't have to be customized. It probably shouldn't be customized to every individual loan officer or team. Like if we can get this humming along, like this files will fly through and we'll all know what the acceptable standards are. And we'll all be able to step in and help one another if somebody needs to be out for some reason that doesn't have a team.
Well, and I'll also add from a profitability standpoint, which impacts all of us, because it all filters down to the rate you're quoting on the street. From a profitability standpoint, the most efficient companies are the most profitable companies, because there's just less mistakes. There's less issues. There's less things to overcome. So it matters a lot. And defect-free loans applies to all of us. So that's got to be our focus, is how do we do a defect-free loan and do it profitably, because that's the deal.